me. Okay, so let me kind of walk you through what what our setup is now and what I've tried, and hopefully you can tell me what I did wrong. I'm certain it's got to be something super simple. I just don't exactly know.
Okay, go ahead.
So we have a replica set that it's about 850 gigs right now, and we're just trying to switch it over to a sharded cluster. And so I have the Mongo S set up. I have 3 config servers set up. I add the replica set as a shard. I enable sharding on the database, and then shard the collection with the shard key. And the shard collection function never returns. The logs don't really say that it's doing anything. And if I turn on clients to try to connect through the Mongo S, they'll work for about 5 minutes, and then eventually all the clients will just hang. The Mongo S machine will basically just lock up, and I won't be able to do anything on it anymore. And I basically end up having to just take down the sharding and revert back to the single replica set.
Okay, so is your replica set, it basically consists of one collection?
No, there's 2 on there, but I'm only trying to shard one of them.
What's the size of the one collection? Are they like evenly split? Is one a lot bigger?
No, the one that I'm sharding is significantly bigger. It's probably probably I would say 80% of the total size.
Can you do you have access to the replica set right now?
Yep.
Can you go in and do a db.collectionname.stats and send me the output?
So this is for the collection that we're trying to shard.
Yeah.
Did you get that? It's in Slack.
Okay, let me take a look. Yeah, I got that. Okay, let me just give me a minute to look over it. Okay, so I think that I know what the problem here is, and we're going to probably spend the rest of the time discussing how to get around this. Okay, so I had a feeling this might be it, so I already pulled up some of Mongo's documentation here. So I'll send you something in a second.
So one thing I have I have a thread going on the Google group as well, and one of the guys suggested that I try increasing the chunk size just for the initial sharding, and then once it's been able to actually split everything into chunks, then lower the chunk size slowly until I get to like the 64 megs or whatever the default is.
Right.
Even with that, maybe I didn't set the chunk size high enough, but even with that, it wouldn't do anything either.
So I just sent you Mongo's documentation on limitations, and generally, if you're above 250 gigs of data, you're not going to be able to use the shard collection command.
Okay.
And so you could see in the link that I just put into Slack. For existing collections that hold MongoDB documents, enable sharding on any collection that contains less than 256 gigabytes of data supported. It may be able to shard collections with as many as 400 gigabytes of data, depending on the distribution of document sizes. So you're running at 650 gigabytes in your collection, so that's well above what they say that you're going to be able to do. Now, what you are seeing on the Google Groups is technically correct, that if you are able to trick Mongo into using very large chunk sizes, you might be able to convince it to shard that collection. However, what won't work is decreasing, well, in general, decreasing the chunk size isn't going to work very well to cause more splits, because what usually happens as you decrease the chunk sizes, Mongo instead will mark the chunks, which are now larger than the new chunk size, as jumbo chunks, which are then forever unable to be split. Why they do that and they don't just split it, I have no idea. But I would, in general, not recommend trying to hack around with Mongo's with the internals of Mongo to get the shard collection command to work, because if it doesn't, if something goes wrong, then you could be in a lot worse situation than you started.
Yeah.
However, this definitely isn't the end of the story. As I said in the message, I've moved a 5 terabyte collection to sharding, and that worked out just fine.
Okay.
So, however, that's not as simple as just adding it as a shard and issuing a shard collection command.
Right.
So before I go on, we can discuss this in some more depth about this problem and some things that might happen if we try and muck around in the configuration service to change these settings. And it depends if you're interested in hearing, the alternative plan that I have cooked up for us.
Yeah, I'm very interested. So let me tell you what we also have going on as well as an alternative. So, and this is kind of what I've had to do in the past to shard collections. And this would have been back in when Mongo 2.0 first came out. So sharding wasn't that great. And basically, we would just reinsert all the data into the cluster. For us, though, that would be, for this collection, that would require hours of downtime, and that's not something we could afford. So our kind of threshold that we've set for ourselves is like an hour's worth of downtime. And
okay.
So we got one of our guys is actually working on trying to do that in kind of in a MapReduce, basically. I don't know if it's going to work, but it's one of the experiments we have going on. Yeah.
So pumping 650 gigabytes of data out and into a cluster is definitely going to be a challenge in an hour, but there is a much easier way that you can do this without any downtime.
And I'd love to hear that.
Okay, so, and that's why you got me on the phone, right? Okay,
yes,
so
exactly. Here's
another link to a tool which is far underrated in my opinion, called Mongo Connector. Let me just describe what Mongo Connector does. So what Mongo Connector does is it will, so let's say you want to move one collection to another collection. What it'll first do is Mongo Connector will start, it'll record the time that it starts, and then it will start to just have a cursor, and it'll just go through and it'll read a document, insert the document into the new collection. Read the document, insert it. Read the document, insert it. And it'll just, do what you would expect from a stupid copy, just scroll through and copy all the documents and put it in. And as you said, this could take, day, 2 days, okay? But the smart thing that it does then is once it finishes copying everything, it looks at the timestamp that it started and said, I missed all of these updates. And so it goes to the op log from the time that it started, and it begins playing the op log forward. And it plays the operations of the op log onto the new target collection until it reaches the current point in the op log, and then it just tails the op log, and it'll act like another replica set. Any update comes into the original collection, it gets mirrored almost immediately onto the second collection. So what you just have to do is you set up your new collection in your new environment. You get your old one, your application still talks to the old collection, and you start Mongo connector from the original one to the target. And the and all of your writes still go to the old one, and once everything is caught up and mirrored between the two, you just freeze your writes. You have like maybe depending on your configuration, I've seen applications be able to flip over without any downtime. Sometimes they take 60 or 90 seconds where they freeze their writes and they flip the connection strings and they open the flood pipes back up. But by the time that they're both in sync, they both have the exact same data, so all you have to do is switch your connection to the new collection, and then you blow away the old one. Or, you keep it for a backup in case anything goes wrong for a while, But this has worked very successfully before.
This sounds exactly like what we need. I mean, I was actually considering doing this myself in our code and just write to both documents or both clusters, and then just setting a timestamp and writing a script that tails the old or goes through the old cluster and pulls everything before that timestamp out. So
the great thing is someone already needed to do this.
Exactly.
I've myself have put a bunch of code into here just to do that, and so some of the features that do exactly what you're talking about, that you want to move only one collection, are in there. So you can specify the source collection that you're trying to pipe, and then you could specify the namespace of the target collection. So even if you want, you can pipe it back into the same replica set. You can create a new cluster and pipe it towards that. The only caveat is that, do you know how long your oplog is? Do you know how many days or how many hours?
I don't think I actually change it, so that would be whatever the default is.
So the default has a set size, which isn't necessarily a set amount of time. So if you have a very low traffic, then your oplog could last for months. But if you have very high traffic, it might last for hours. So we can go ahead and see what that is. Let me try and remember what the command is for that, and then you could run it. Let's see. So you want to query the oplog for the. So you want to query the oplog for the oldest timestamp. So it's going to be something like go use local, then db oplog.rs find. I'm putting this into Slack as I'm talking.
I just did a find one, assuming that would give me the first, assuming they're ordered by timestamp.
So that should give you the most recent. So if you look at the timestamp, it should be very recent.
No, it's actually old.
Okay, then
it's actually more than 2 days old.
Okay, so I always forget which direction things sort in. So if that's 2 days old, we can check by that command should just give us a command should sort it by the timestamp order I just put into Slack, and we can just double check that that's definitely the oldest.
Yeah, it's the same one.
Okay, awesome. So the only caveat then is that this operation has to complete in less than the oplog time.
Mm-hmm.
right? If it's longer than the oplog time, it won't be able to pick back up.
Okay.
Um,
I think, I mean, currently already, because the collection is so huge, it's kind of hard to query on anything other than the very specific index and, a very short time window. So right now, when I have to do complicated queries on it, I just have to go through the entire collection, and I can do that right now in about 14 or 15 hours. So
okay.
I think Mongo connector would be able to go through within 2 days, I'm sure.
Yeah. So let's see what our requisite rate would have to be. Um, so it's going to have to copy about 3,500 documents a second into the new collection, which is not unreasonable. Now, so that's definitely what I would suggest. What I would suggest that you pursue.
Yeah, I'm glad you knew about this, because I wish I'd been told about somebody had told me about this a week ago. It's
Oh, there you
definitely,
go, saving you hours and downtime, which is perhaps more important.
yeah. Um, okay, so basically I just need to set up a new cluster with a new replica set, basically, and run this.
Right. So you'll set up the cluster. Now, if my suggestion would be that are you running in AWS?
Yeah.
So my suggestion would be that you start with at least 2 shards, maybe
Yeah,
3.
that makes it even better, because now I can start with 2 or 3 shards, rather than having to add the other shards later on.
Right. And when you do turn on Mongo Connector, what I would suggest is Mongo Connector should run locally on the replica set that you're querying the data from. And you should also run a Mongo S that is connected to the new cluster locally on that box as well. That will save you network hops, and that will help your insertion speed. So you'll just have to pull out from the local instance and then insert into the Mongo S, and that's all going to be done locally. And the only stuff going over the network will be the traffic from the Mongo S to the replica sets, which will be the fastest that you could get, because that's running the C driver natively.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm very excited now that I'm thinking about this, and I see a light now. Okay,
Great, great.
let me think if I have any questions that I need.
No, I mean, because when I saw your problem, I was like, man, this sounds familiar. I think I helped this guy out.
Yeah.
And now it's 20 minutes in. You know exactly what you need to do,
Yes.
and you got 40 more minutes to ask me questions.
Uh, yeah. All right. Well, then, can I ask you an unrelated question related to Mongo, but not this problem?
Yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
so we have another cluster that currently, our API takes in data from other people, and then we put it into a queue, and then we have a series of machines processing that queue. And all is fine under normal traffic conditions. Probably 50% of the queue workers are idle at any given time during normal traffic hours. But we have this new customer who's coming on board, and they have a ton of traffic, and it comes in bursts. And every time one of their bursts comes in, for some reason, Mongo connections just get completely overwhelmed, and we start getting connection errors, and we start getting where we run go, and we start getting the Go driver throws these connections called, that's just a connection closed explicitly. Every now and then we'll get connection reset by peer. And it just, there's U-limit settings are fine. We've played with every possible driver config and just can't seem to find anything that might be causing it.
So, do you see anything in the Mongo logs when this happens, or does Mongo look like it doesn't see any problem?
Mongo thinks everything's fine.
Okay. And the boxes, have you looked if their network traffic spikes to a point where it's maxed out, or the CPU becomes very busy?
On the client machines or the Mongo machines?
The Mongo machines.
No, Mongo is completely fine in every way.
Okay. And the Mongo S's, are they on a remote box or are they local to your client?
They're remote.
Okay. And is it just one Mongo S that you're trying to talk to?
It's not a sharded cluster, it's just a replica set.
Oh, okay, okay. And all this traffic floods in at once, and Mongo drops a bunch of connections.
Yeah, and so the way, and are you familiar with Go?
Not specifically, but I've seen some presentations of how their driver works. It's actually very similar to how the Python and C driver work.
So in our app code, we run a worker pool. So we have one Go routine that's pulling from our queue and distributing to a bunch of other Go routines that are processing. And so we might run this with, let's say, 500 workers. One process is managing 500 Go routines to process the queue. But under normal traffic conditions, maybe only 200 of those workers are ever actually active because there's just not that much data coming in off of the queue. But during these bursts, all 5 of these Go routines become active and are processing things. Each one requires at least one database lookup, could require a lookup and then an insert. And so that's just more information about what's going on.
Okay, so I have seen something like this before, but unfortunately, unlike the previous problem, there isn't really a solution for it. So what ends up happening is, so we saw this when we actually moved from worse hardware to better hardware. And Mongo is able to accept connections fast enough that it actually encountered a hard-coded limit in the Mongo code. Let me see if I can find the reference for you that we believe is the cause of these kind of alerts. And it's like completely before Mongo actually picks up the connection, which is why you don't ever see anything in the Mongo logs, because Mongo doesn't actually get the connection. So, I'm just pulling up the ticket here. Okay, so this is what I believe is the cause. Posting the Jira ticket in Slack now. This SYN-ACK log is hard-coded to 128, which seems to get overwhelmed sometimes. Like this was hard-coded back in 2011, and to fix some other client's issue, and it's still an open ticket for people to make it configurable. This is what my team determined was the problem, because we couldn't find anything actually at Mongo, like none of our tuning of Mongo or even tuning of the configuration on the OS made much of a difference. So the only way that we were able to deal with this is to actually try and decrease how hard Mongo was getting hit, and this only happened for single replica sets. We were able to hit the hit Mongo S's much harder because Mongo S inherently did connection pooling. So short of being able to implement some connection pooling in your Go routine, where you each one of these routines pulls from a common pool of connections, then you really need to either go through some sort of persistent service that can pool connections, or throttle how quickly they are making these connections.
I mean, so maybe our next experiment should just be try sharding this cluster. It's already at approaching 50 gigs worth of data, so we're probably not far away from needing to shard anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and sharding on that is going to be way easier since you can just use the shard collection command at that scale.
Right. Okay, so I'll give that a try as well. We're still kind of, I mean, we've spent the last 3 or 4 days troubleshooting this issue, but we haven't, or hopefully haven't exhausted all possibilities. We're still working on different configurations as far as how many workers we run and how many workers we even need to run for that matter, and so some things will hopefully come up in the future.
Yeah, I do hope that there's a different solution. It sounds very similar to what we had. There was like a team of 4 people working on this on and off for 4 to 6 weeks, and it got bad enough that we were digging through the Mongo source code and found this hard-coded entry, and we can't find anything else to attribute other than this. The next step was that we were going to actually compile Mongo with the higher setting and see if we could reproduce it, but that was just deemed way too time intensive for this this kind of edge case, and we opted for changing the access pattern slightly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to be more trial and error with that problem, I think.
Yeah, it's those investigations can take a lot of time, and there's not much else to do other than sink time into it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's kind of where we're at right now. Tomorrow we're replicating our entire production setup and having this one customer just hit that one service so we can see just how it performs and make tweaks to it in real time and just see how it goes.
I mean, that sounds like a great way to actually narrow this stuff down.
I hope so, because I'm not really like a systems guy, so I've kind of exhausted everything I know to do, especially when it comes to networking and socket management and all of that. I don't know what to do anymore, so I'm hoping our test tomorrow will show something.
I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not a networking guy either, and it really took the team I was on to dig, and we had one guy who was way more networking than DB, and when we couldn't find anything in the DB, the networking guy just like went to town, and we found the network card throwing a bunch of SYN-ACK errors, and made us look through the Mongo code for any of these TCP backlog SYN-ACK stuff, and yeah. And
where did you see this? Where did you see the SYN-ACK errors and like the kernel log?
Yeah, he said that he found the network interface card was throwing errors into the kernel, and I'm not exactly sure where, or it's probably even system specific. What OS are you running?
CentOS.
Yeah, we're running CentOS also.
I'm pretty certain I've seen those errors before in a setup before.
Yeah.
It's just somewhere in var log, basically. One of those
Yeah,
files.
I'm trying to look through this thread to see if I can find exactly where. I'm not sure it's here. Yeah, they pulled this out of they're running netstat and they found listen queue socket overflow exceptions.
While following netstat.
Yeah, that's one of the ways they found this.
What was the error, you said?
They saw listen queue socket overflow exceptions.
Okay. Every little bit of info helps. It gives me something to look for at least.
Yeah. Okay. So it says when they see in the D message they see possible SYN flooding on port blah sending cookies.
Okay. I have definitely seen SYN flooding before, um, but not in Mongo. I've seen that when you're getting like DOSed.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that's what they say that it looks like Mongo was basically shutting, not even accepting a bunch of the connections because it almost looked like it was getting DOSed because it just couldn't pick the connections off the socket fast enough, so they just started getting dropped.
All
The
right.
errors that we saw were mostly no candidate server found because it would be trying to contact the primary, and the primary would have this SYN flooding issue, and so it would only be able to contact the secondary, and then it would throw no candidate server found. But that was in PHP, which generally that's the worst driver, man. Just glad that you're not using it.
I've actually worked more with with PHP than in anything else, and and the Go driver is really slow.
Oh,
It's
really?
it's I can do inserts like I know I've written scripts in PHP that would do inserts at 10, 15,000 a second.
Yeah,
I can get Go to do at best 5,000 a second.
that's weird. I
Yeah.
remember a bunch of they rebuilt all the Mongo tools in Go for Mongo 3.0, which is
Yeah.
great. They say that's real fast.
Maybe I'm doing something I shouldn't be then. So maybe something I should explore as well.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I haven't really used Go. I've been doing a lot of my stuff in Python, and the Python driver I find is very good.
Yeah.
Um, but still, nothing really beats the C driver.
Java is pretty, and if you can get past the Java driver is pretty really efficient as well.
Yeah, that's true.
That's typically my go-to because I don't really know C. I know Java a whole lot better. So if I needed to do something really intensive, I would probably load up the Java driver.
Yeah, that's what everyone at my organization is moving towards. They're moving off of PHP to Java, and honestly, just a boost from being able to pull connections from a because you can have your connections held in the JVM, and it's not some transient thread. It's just been amazing boost across the entire system.
Yeah. All right, well, I don't think I have any more questions. I mean, I think you pretty much got me as far as you can, and now it's just up to me.
Okay, man. If that's that, then I'm just glad we were able to identify the problem and find some solutions so quickly.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, then
Well,
listen. If you run into any other issues with this, then feel free to send me another message. Okay.
great. Thank you very much.
Good luck and have a good night.
Thank you. You too.